To Denham and NBC 10 courtroom insider Sue O'Connell braving the weather conditions there for us, Sue. We've been talking on Canton Confidential about the likelihood that this jury had to wade through so much evidence, and of course that is still true. But I wonder, Sue, what you think was happening in that jury room now that we know that people were kind of dug in on their personal beliefs and the rhetorical arguments that must have been ensuing inside that jury room.
Right. What we heard, Glenn, from the jurors' note, right, was that it wasn't about the evidence. It was a different interpretation of the evidence. It was, if I remember what they said correctly, that some felt it met the burden of proof and some said that it left too much reasonable doubt. And we had heard earlier I think the note from this morning from the jury that there was a deeply held convictions, or there were deeply held convictions, that it wasn't that they hadn't worked hard enough. It wasn't that they hadn't evaluated the evidence. It wasn't that they hadn't thought hard about this. That one, two, we don't know how many jurors had come down to a decision that the other jurors disagreed with, and there was no moving them. So some immediate questions I have about that was that if there is indeed some deeply held conviction, and remember, we don't know if they were disagreeing about charges, the lesser charges, we don't know if they were disagreeing about guilty or not guilty, we don't know what the numbers are in the split. But, and I also think that the foreman was also being somewhat diplomatic by the way that the letters were written, the notes were written. We can't intuit what the numbers are there. So having said that, saying someone has, or some jurors have, a deeply held conviction, I'm wondering if that was something that maybe should have been vetted out during the voir dire of the witnesses. For example, I'm a commentator, so I can tell you this. I'm against the death penalty, so I would be unable to serve on a jury if death penalty was on the table. That's fine, that's the law of the land, but I would be vetted out of that. So I'm curious to find out what this strongly held conviction is that one or more jurors have. And I'm also just really very curious to find out if it breaks down between a not guilty versus guilty, or if there were some of the lesser charges that really broke it up. Glenn and JC.